Have you ever met someone who wasn't incredibly wealthy, yet always seemed financially secure? They weren't showing off. They weren't chasing every opportunity. They weren't constantly worried about money. And somehow, they seemed calmer than people who had much more. What if financial security isn't just about how much money you have? What if it's also about how you think? Today, let's explore the mindset patterns that often separate financial stress from financial peace.
Quiet wealth, calm finance, better life.
Many people assume financial security comes from reaching a specific number: $100,000, $500,000, $1 million, $2 million. The exact number varies from person to person, but the assumption remains the same. Once I get there, I'll finally feel secure. Yet real life often tells a different story. Have you ever noticed that some people with substantial wealth remain anxious? They worry constantly. They fear losing what they've built. They compare themselves to others. They never quite feel safe. Meanwhile, there are people with far fewer resources who seem remarkably calm. They sleep well. They make thoughtful decisions. They don't appear obsessed with money. Why? Because financial security is partly a financial condition, but it is also a psychological condition. Money matters. Of course it does. Financial resources create options, flexibility, protection, freedom. But mindset shapes how those resources are experienced. Two people can have identical financial situations and feel completely different about their futures. One feels secure. The other feels terrified. One focuses on what they have. The other focuses on what they lack. This doesn't mean mindset replaces money. It doesn't. But it does mean that security involves more than numbers alone. And that's what makes today's conversation so important. Because understanding how financially secure people think can sometimes be just as valuable as understanding how they invest. They focus on sufficiency instead of comparison. One of the most noticeable differences between financially secure people and financially stressed people is where they focus their attention. Financially stressed people often compare, constantly. Someone else earns more. Someone else has a larger home. Someone else retired earlier. Someone else owns more assets. There is always another comparison available. And comparison has an interesting effect. It moves the finish line. No matter how much progress someone makes, it never feels enough, because someone else always appears ahead. Financially secure people tend to think differently. They still have goals, they still make plans, but their attention is centered on sufficiency, not superiority. They ask, do I have enough for the life I want? Can I support my priorities? Can I handle reasonable challenges? Can I continue moving forward? Notice how different those questions are. They're not asking whether they're winning, they're asking whether they're prepared. And that shift changes everything. Because comparison creates endless dissatisfaction, while sufficiency creates perspective. The goal becomes building a life that works, not outperforming strangers. Meet David. Let's imagine someone named David. David is 62 years old, recently retired. He isn't extraordinarily wealthy. His portfolio is respectable, but not remarkable. He lives comfortably, pays his bills, travels occasionally, enjoys time with family. By many standards, David's financial life appears ordinary. Yet people often notice something about him. He's calm. He rarely seems anxious about money. He doesn't obsess over market headlines. He doesn't constantly discuss finances. He doesn't chase every new opportunity. And when friends ask about retirement, he often gives a surprising answer. I have enough. Not unlimited wealth, not perfect certainty. Enough.
That word reflects something important. David understands that financial security is not built entirely from accumulation. It's also built from alignment. His spending aligns with his values. His expectations align with reality. His resources align with his lifestyle. And because those things align, he experiences a sense of stability that many people spend years searching for.
They respect money without worshipping it. Financially secure people usually respect money, but they don't worship it. This distinction matters. People who worship money often expect it to solve every problem, every fear, every uncertainty, every emotional discomfort. But money cannot do that. Money can provide options, it can reduce stress, it can improve flexibility, but it cannot eliminate uncertainty, and it cannot create meaning by itself. Financially secure people understand this. They see money as a tool, an important tool, a powerful tool, but still a tool. The purpose of money is not simply to exist. The purpose is to support a life, relationships, experiences, freedom, purpose, health, peace of mind. When money becomes the goal itself, satisfaction often remains elusive. When money serves larger goals, it becomes easier to appreciate. David understands this. He saves carefully, invests thoughtfully, spends intentionally. But his identity is not tied to his account balance. And that gives him something many people never achieve: perspective.
They accept that uncertainty never disappears. One of the most surprising traits of financially secure people is their relationship with uncertainty. Most people spend years trying to eliminate uncertainty. They want guarantees, perfect plans, complete predictability. But eventually, many financially secure individuals learn something important.
Uncertainty never fully disappears. Not at 30, not at 50, not at 70. Markets change, health changes, families change, economies change, life changes, and no amount of money can eliminate every unknown.
This realization can feel uncomfortable at first, but it often becomes liberating, because once people stop demanding certainty, they can begin focusing on preparation. Preparation is achievable. Perfection is not.
David understands this distinction. He doesn't expect the future to unfold perfectly. He expects surprises, challenges, unexpected developments. And because he expects them, he isn't shocked when they arrive. Instead, he adapts. And adaptability is often one of the strongest forms of financial resilience.
They build margin into their lives. Financially secure people often have something invisible: margin. Margin is the space between what you need and what you have. The space between income and expenses. The space between obligations and capacity. The space between problems and crisis. Many people live without margin. Every dollar is committed. Every month feels tight. Every surprise feels disruptive.
Financially secure people tend to think differently. They intentionally create room. Room in their budgets, room in their schedules, room in their plans, because they understand that life rarely follows exact predictions.
Margin provides flexibility, and flexibility creates resilience. David doesn't spend every dollar available to him, not because he's fearful, but because he values options. He understands that unused capacity is not wasted capacity. It's protection. It's freedom. It's peace of mind. And over time, that margin becomes one of the foundations of his financial security. They make decisions slowly. One of the most overlooked characteristics of financially secure people is how slowly they make important decisions. Not because they are indecisive, not because they lack confidence, but because they understand something many people forget. Most financial mistakes happen during moments of emotional urgency. Think about the last time you felt pressure around money. Perhaps the market was falling. Perhaps inflation was rising. Perhaps you read a frightening headline. Maybe a friend told you about an investment opportunity that seemed impossible to ignore. Those moments create emotional pressure, and emotional pressure often creates poor decisions. Financially secure people recognize this pattern. When emotions rise, they slow down. They pause. They gather information. They allow fear and excitement to settle before taking action. David learned this lesson years ago. During a market decline, several of his friends sold investments in a panic. They couldn't tolerate the uncertainty. The losses felt unbearable. The headlines felt terrifying. Selling seemed like the safest choice. David felt the same fear, but instead of acting immediately, he waited. Not because he knew the future, but because he knew something about himself. He knew fear was influencing his thinking, and he didn't want fear making important decisions on his behalf. Weeks later, after emotions cooled, he reviewed his plan. Nothing had changed. His goals were the same. His timeline was the same. His strategy still made sense. So he stayed the course. Years later, he looked back and realized that one of the most valuable financial skills isn't predicting markets, it's managing emotions. Financially secure people understand that patience often creates better outcomes than speed, especially when money is involved.
They think in decades, not days. Modern life encourages short-term thinking. News updates arrive every minute. Markets move every second. Social media rewards immediate reactions. Everything feels urgent. Everything feels important. Yet, financially secure people often operate on a different timeline. They think in years, sometimes decades. This long-term perspective changes how they experience uncertainty. A market decline that feels catastrophic over 1 week may appear insignificant over 20 years. An economic slowdown that dominates headlines today may become a distant memory tomorrow. David rarely checked his portfolio daily. Not because he didn't care, but because daily movements rarely affected his long-term goals. Instead, he focused on bigger questions. Was he saving consistently? Was he living below his means? Was he maintaining a diversified portfolio? Was he preparing for the future he wanted? These questions mattered far more than what happened on any particular Tuesday afternoon. Financially secure people understand that wealth is usually built gradually, not dramatically. It grows through thousands of small decisions, repeated consistently over time. And that kind of growth requires patience. Patience becomes easier when your focus extends beyond the next headline, beyond the next month, beyond the next year, toward the life you're trying to build over decades. They avoid lifestyle inflation. One of the greatest threats to long-term financial security isn't low income,
It's lifestyle inflation. Lifestyle inflation occurs when spending rises every time income rises. A promotion arrives, expenses increase. A bonus arrives, spending increases. Income grows, lifestyle expands. At first, this feels harmless, even deserved. After all, people work hard. Naturally, they want to enjoy the rewards. But over time, lifestyle inflation creates a subtle trap. The more someone earns, the more they need to maintain their lifestyle.
Financially secure people tend to approach this differently. They allow some improvements, they enjoy progress, but they don't automatically convert every increase in income into permanent increases in spending. Instead, they create a gap, a space between what they earn and what they spend. That gap becomes savings, investments, flexibility, future opportunities. David experienced this throughout his career. Every raise presented a choice: spend more or save more. Usually he did a little of both, but he always ensured that some portion of increased income strengthened his future. Over decades, that habit became powerful, not because it required sacrifice, but because it created options. And options are one of the foundations of financial security.
They know what enough means. Perhaps the most important difference of all is that financially secure people often develop a clear understanding of enough. This may sound simple, but it is surprisingly rare. Many people spend their lives chasing more income, more assets, more possessions, more status, more achievements. And while ambition can be healthy, endless pursuit creates a problem. If enough is never defined, enough is never reached. The finish line keeps moving. The goal keeps expanding. The satisfaction remains temporary.
Financially secure people tend to ask a different question. Instead of asking, how much more can I accumulate? They ask, what do I actually need for a good life? This question shifts the conversation dramatically, because a good life is not always the most expensive life. It may involve meaningful relationships, purposeful work, good health, time freedom, peace of mind, a comfortable home, strong community. Many of these things have surprisingly little relationship to extreme wealth.
David eventually realized that his definition of success had changed. Earlier in life, success meant earning more, building more, achieving more. But later in life, success looked different. It looked like freedom. It looked like flexibility. It looked like waking up without constant financial anxiety. And once he understood what enough meant to him, he stopped chasing numbers that no longer mattered.
Security comes from alignment. When people imagine financial security, they often picture large account balances. And certainly, resources matter. But after studying countless financial journeys, one pattern appears repeatedly. Security often comes from alignment. Alignment between income and spending, alignment between goals and behavior, alignment between values and decisions, alignment between expectations and reality. Without alignment, even significant wealth can feel unstable. With alignment, moderate wealth can feel remarkably secure.
David's financial life was not perfect. No one's is. He experienced setbacks, unexpected expenses, market declines, periods of uncertainty. Yet he felt secure because the major parts of his life worked together. His spending reflected his priorities, his investments reflected his goals, his expectations reflected reality. There was harmony, and that harmony created confidence. Not confidence that nothing would ever go wrong,
but confidence that he could handle what came next. And that confidence is one of the most valuable assets a person can possess.
When people think about financial security, they often focus on numbers: balances, income, net worth, investment returns. And while those things matter, they are only part of the story. Because true financial security is not simply a number on a statement. It is a relationship with money, a relationship with uncertainty, a relationship with yourself. Some people spend their entire lives trying to eliminate every financial risk, every unknown, every possibility of discomfort. But life doesn't work that way. Uncertainty remains. Challenges remain. Unexpected events remain. The goal is not removing uncertainty from life. The goal is becoming capable of navigating it. Financially secure people understand this. They do not expect perfect outcomes. They expect imperfect realities, and they prepare accordingly. They focus on what they can control: their spending, their saving, their planning, their mindset, their behavior. And over time, those small daily choices create something powerful. Not just wealth, not just assets, but confidence. The confidence that comes from knowing you've prepared thoughtfully. The confidence that comes from living within your means. The confidence that comes from understanding what truly matters. Perhaps that's why some people appear financially secure long before they become wealthy, because security begins internally, before it appears externally. It begins with clarity, perspective, patience, and alignment. So if you find yourself wondering whether you'll ever feel financially secure, perhaps the better question is not, how much money do I need? Perhaps the better question is, how do I want my financial life to feel? Because once that answer becomes clear, many other decisions become clearer too. Thank you for spending this time with me.
And if these conversations help you think more calmly about money and retirement, I hope you'll join me again. Quiet wealth is built slowly and lived fully.
Quiet wealth, calm finance, better life.